All right, let's quickly review kind of where we left off last week. So we were building our research report agent, and we asked the user what they'd like to research. We're using the user context block. Maybe I'll do this in the workflow here. We're asking for a topic. We are using the user context block to help refine the topic and gather some additional info. We use a generate text block in order to generate an array. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just going to mute folks or ask folks to mute if they're not already muted. Um, we use this generate text block to generate three queries. And then we have a run workflow block that searches Google. And then for each uh, website that's returned, where we are scraping each individual website via this other sub workflow and sending that scraped content and the URL back up into a variable called all scraped content. And then we are sending all scraped content back up to the main flow. And at the end of the workflow, we were just testing it all out, making sure that we were able to display all research materials. And we can see in the debugger here that we do, in fact, get all these back. I ran this after. I know that last time we were getting back kind of the other output, my test output before. And so I just kind of skipped this step, ran it one more time before the call here, and we now have all of the variables and all of the content, or excuse me, all the URLs and all of the content in these three arrays here. So now the next step in the workflow is to create the research report in JSON and format that JSON to be used in an HTML asset later on. And we know that we have kind of a general structure here in the spec where we're going to include a title, a subtitle, nest an array of sections, and each section is going to include an H2 header and then another nested array of subsections. And each subsection will have an H3 header and some paragraphs inside of them. So in our agent here, we're just going to prep a couple of things because we want to make sure that all of our testing runs smoothly. So what I'm going to do is I am simply going to uh, just configure the mock data for all of this stuff so that we do not need to, like we can essentially kind of use the data we've already collected in our first test run and just start from that point. So I'm going to save this. We have desert survival techniques. We have our user context where we can configure the mock data that we got back from this. So let's go ahead and save this. Make sure. Oh, well, we can just save this for now. It's fine because we're basically wanting to kind of skip over all of this stuff anyway and just use the output from this run workflow block. So we're going to go ahead and configure the mock data here. And we'll just go ahead and have the mock data saved. So we know that the output is this large format variable called all research materials. So we can go ahead and save that. And we're kind of displaying everything in this display content block because we were just running it one time, making sure we get all of it back. So now what we want to do is we want to write the research report. So I'm going to go ahead and add a generate text block. We can go ahead and delete this display content block. And inside of this generate text block, we're going to want to include all of the information from our previous steps in order to write the report. So first, I'm going to take these variables. Let me zoom in so that we can all see. We have these variables, topic and topic details in tags already. So rather than typing them out, I'm going to copy them. And we want in this generate text block, we want to kind of nest them into kind of a larger tag called article materials. So let me go ahead and we will paste these in, and then we'll close out this tag, article materials. There we go. And then the last thing that we will want to do is add all of our research materials that we get back from this run workflow block. So we have this output variable called all research materials. So we're going to also include that uh, here in another tag, all research materials, and let's close that tag out. Now I may also want to, um, well, this is fine for now. So now we can go on to writing out our prompt. And I'm just going to, before I expand this, I'm going to save as a variable because we're going to want to use it later. And we can call this variable, it's going to be our report, and it's going to be formatted in JSON. So let's keep the variable simple. I'll call this report JSON. Okay, the output schema is also going to be JSON. And then let's just double check and make sure that we are using the right model and it has the correct model settings. So right now, the default model is 2.5 Pro, temperature set at 0.8, and max response size is 50,000, which is pretty big, but it should be just fine for us. And now we can go ahead and expand this. So one thing I've noticed in the chat is there are folks that are asking, I can't, I have the prompt exactly right. I have the output exactly right. And then I notice in their model settings, they have their model temperature turned all the way up to 2, and their max response size is like, 3,000. And so even if your prompt is perfect, and even if your sample output's perfect, with these settings, you're most likely not going to get valid JSON back. You're most likely going to get, some sort of garbled text or gibberish. So just something to look out for as you are building. Okay, now let's go ahead and expand this into full screen here. And what I am going to do is I have a really long I have a really long prompt. And the way that I got to this prompt, I'm gonna paste it in so that we can take a look at it. And I we can go let's quickly read through. We're gonna use the provided research plan. In this case, we're going to delete. Sorry, let me back up a sec. What I did here in order to get to this prompt is I thought, oh, what is an agent that is similar to this agent that we're building? And it's pretty clear that the agent is pretty similar to the deep research agent. So what I did and what I recommend that y'all do is look at agents that are similar to what you're trying to build and take from those agents, copy things from those agents that you think are valuable. So I opened up this deep research and I made a copy of this deep research agent, and then I looked in the agent and tried to find places where some of this some of the prompts occur. In this case, I'm not going to spend too much time in this agent, but I found the prompt in this agent. It might be inside of the deep research, the run query workflow. Well, I'm not sure. We can see uh, some of the prompting techniques used here. And this is there's a lot of good stuff and there's a lot of good prompts that are available in some of these pre-built agents that you're totally welcome to pull from as inspiration. So that's what I did in order to write my own prompt for this. And some of this is part of that prompt. So now what I did after copying and pasting, different sections from different blocks that I found and thought would be useful in my own prompt is I just go through and I kind of modify it to match, my particular case here. So in this case, we don't have a research plan. But we do have compiled research materials, and those materials are tagged in all research materials. So we can go ahead and include that tag here. And it says create a comprehensive report of at least 5,000 words that answers the original request. And the original request might be found, we might want to structure this in a way that we're able to have like reference this request somehow, right? And so we can do that by kind of nesting this a bit, the topic and topic details a bit further, and just saying we can have, topic info and add this other nested tag here. And then we can reference that answers the original request in topic info. If the request is not in English, match the language. And then we kind of give it a role, act as a seasoned professional, analyst who is detailed and specific in their writing, focus on answering the user's request, but also creating a comprehensive report might preemptively answer any follow-ups the user has. You're skilled and capable. This is all setting up the role. And we could even, if we wanted to, include, that role tag, right? We also give it some additional instruction here to be extremely thoughtful and insightful and to analyze the research thoroughly. We give it some notes on the style. In this case, we give it some notes like we want it to sound like these publications. It should be highbrow, not be highbrow, dense, or inaccessible. Tone should be factual and detailed. And we want to use direct quotes from the research materials. We might even, if in our case, maybe we don't want to use direct quotes, let's go ahead and delete that, right? Lastly, we have some formatting rules. So use GitHub flavored Markdown to format the report. You may use bullet points in tables as well as inline formatting. Now, in this case, we are going to be responding in JSON. So I'm going to delete this. Do not include H1 title for the report. We can delete this. Never use the heading executive summary. Start your report with an H2 section titled overview. Yes, this is important. Group the report into major sections with subsections. Yeah, Joe?
So what happens if like the H1 and the H2 lines that are in there, since this is in the prompt, what happens if you, oh, never
If
mind.
the
I think,
H1,
no, no, yeah, what happens if when you also give the structured output, if it conflicts?
it will try to follow the structured output. It'll prioritize the structured output, but you don't want to give it conflicting, like the whole point is you don't want to give it conflicting instruction in the first place in the prompt, because it just gives you more opportunities to confuse the AI model. And then, yeah, so in this case, we want the title to be H1. We'll create the structured output in just a second. Um, but the last thing is we want to just delete, it looks like for each major section except the overview section, include an italicized summary underneath that includes key takeaways from the section. So we can actually, we're not going to use this in our report, so we can also delete this. And then lastly, this is important, do not include any markdown formatting. Everything should be in plain text. We'll handle formatting later. And then we kind of give it just like the ideal response to this call to the AI model. So to kind of summarize this whole thing is like go find stuff that you think is cool in terms of how things are being prompted, things that you think are going to be useful for your particular use case, and modify them. That's the whole takeaway from this. For the structured output, we, again, just to look back, we do have a structure here, kind of via these bullet points. And this is intentional, these bullet points. And we can mimic this structure of bullets as our JSON, right? So when we have our structured output, we can begin to go ahead and add these different things. So we know that we want a title, and we can include just simple examples. I know there might be some questions as to, we've seen this used, title of report. In this case, I am not using these square brackets for this specifically because we are going to be using an array in our JSON, which also has square brackets. And so I don't want this to become an array of titles, if that makes sense. So instead, we're going to just include it as the data type that we want. In this case, it's a string here. So we'll say title of report. And always remember the rules of JSON. Your keys need to be strings, meaning they need to be in quotes. And then when you have different items, different key value pairs, those need to be separated by a comma, and there should be no trailing commas. So we want a title, we want a subtitle, and this is a string. So we're going to have, whoops, subtitle. And here we can say something like compelling one-line hook for the report. Okay. And then we want to have an object array of sections. So that's going to be an array of objects called sections. So we know the key is called sections. And this is going to be an array of objects. So an array is in square brackets. And then inside of those square brackets, we're going to have objects, which are inside of these double curly braces. Now, inside of each section, so each of these represents one section. Inside of each section, we want to include a header, right? We want to include a section header and then an object array of subsections. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that. We're going to have header. This is a string. We're going to have h2 header text. The next thing we want is some subsections, although I think I also, as a bonus, I thought it would look better if it had kind of an intro paragraph. So I think in my build, I added intro here. And I just had a string that said, one paragraph about the section. And then we have this another object array of subsections. So again, just like we did before, we're going to have this key called subsections. And that is also going to be an array of objects. So we added our array with those square brackets. We're adding our objects with these curly braces. And then inside of those subsections, we want an H3 subsection header and an array of paragraphs. Now notice the last one is not an object array, it's just an array. And a paragraph is going to be a string value, which is just some text inside of quotes. So let's add that. We're going to add our H3. We can just call that H3. And we can say H3 header or subsection. And this is kind of just laying out the outline of the structure for this report. Then we're going to have some paragraphs. And we wanted an array of paragraphs. So an array is those square brackets. And then inside of the array, we want just some paragraphs. So I'm going to say paragraph 1. and we want to separate those with a comma. Paragraph 2, paragraph 3, right? And this, the way I've set this up is just for our own organization with these indentations so that we can see kind of where each of these different things starts and ends. You can see the sections ends here, right? This object, like a single item in that sections array, ends here. And it's all following, this subsections ends here. And this is going to be super useful to kind of read through our JSON later, right? Um, so the last thing that we wanted to accomplish is making sure that we have these bonus sources at the bottom of the report. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a another item here, excuse me, another key value pair after sections called sources. So we know that the sections key value pair ends right here, so we can add a comma and then start adding a key called sources, and then that is going to be an an object array. So square brackets, an array of objects containing each object is going to represent one source, right? And each source is going to include a URL. And for the URLs, I typically like to use https://example.com. You can kind of put whatever you'd like in there. And then we want to include the title of that source. So we're going to include title, and then we'll say title of source article. And so just like that, we have created our JSON structure. Are there any questions with this structure and how this is set up? Does this all make sense? Yeah, Karen?
This might be a red herring, Louis, but when I was looking through videos and the Zoom and various things, and then trying to check things against ChatGPT, occasionally I was getting told you've missed the domain out. Does that ring a bell? Like
You've
I see what you've done with sources, but somewhere I was told the domain is missing. But then
oh,
I don't see that here. So I think, is that a red herring and that's just the same as the URL, or
yeah, I mean you could call this domain if you
the
wanted
same
to.
thing though, right?
It's exactly the same thing. So uh
Okay.
it's, ChatGPT is sending you on a wild goose chase, I think.
Yeah, it's
Um
not the first time it's okay. All right, cool.
yeah, the
Okay, I
other
just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something because it confused me because I didn't see it in your videos. So,
yeah.
yeah, thank you for
Yeah, as long as
clarifying.
you have an easy way to identify that this is the URL of the source, then
Yeah,
you're good to go.
yeah. Okay.
Whatever that is for you.
Thank
Uh,
you.
of course.
Yeah.
So another thing that we talked about last week, that I think may have confused people, is I tended to use these ellipses, so comma, dot, dot, dot. And I just want to reiterate that using this is not valid JSON structure. But so if you're using this in real JSON, you don't want to include these dot, dot, dots. I use them because this structured output is, in a sense, part of the AI prompt. And we can, these three dot, dot, dots can be interpreted as we need more than just one source and one section. And so that's why I have included them in my original video. But it's perfectly fine to not include them because we've prompted that we want a full, uh, like a full research report. And So it will likely need to generate more than this in order to create that research report. So I think it's probably good we can test this out as we're building and see what happens. Okay, so we have finished prompting. This is probably one of the most important steps is making sure we get all of this right and then we get a consistent output. I'm going to go ahead, right click on the block and rename it, and we'll call this um, like something like write JSON report. And why don't we go ahead and run this in the debugger? And since we already have all of this mock data set up, it's just going to pass in all of this through. So we're going to run it in the debugger. And I'm going to click on run. Let's open this up. And this might take a couple of seconds. I'm also, maybe I'll make my screen just a little bit bigger. So what's nice about setting up all of that mock data is we have all of it in our workflow already, and it's just skipped to writing that JSON report. So if you're trying to optimize, for cost savings as you're testing, and also just speed and efficiency as you're testing, I highly recommend you take advantage of that new feature where you can right click and in the debugger, configure mock data, add breakpoints, and things like that. It's going to make this process a whole lot easier for you, and also prevents you from having to. In my video, I had us, adding this content to display content blocks. You no longer need to do that because you can simply configure these blocks with some mock data as you're testing. So this might take a few minutes. While we wait, are there questions on the JSON? Are there questions on anything up to this point that we can re-review? Is all this making sense? I kind of see like a mix of some stares. I'm not as good at reading faces as Dimitri, and I'm much more of like very blunt, literal person. So please speak up. Yeah, Shanice.
Hey, thanks so much for doing this. I had a question that I posted in Slack. Is it okay if I just repeat it here?
I want to keep the discussion focused around this agent,
Yeah.
but we can, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Um,
it's about the agent.
okay. Oh, okay, great. If it's about like this agent, then yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, essentially what's going on is one thing that I noticed when watching the YouTube recording, not the Zoom recording, was when you did the first export, the first run flow with the sub 1 and sub 1.2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you put it into, when you got the scrape, the all research materials scrape, and
Mm-hmm.
you copied it into the next stage,
Mm-hmm.
is it report JSON? I don't know. I think it might be
Yeah, all research. I think it's called all research materials.
yeah, yeah. And then you put that into the JSON. Your the words for your file or your the full log button thing, it was like 200,000 words or something like that. And then when I did it, only got like 7,000 words. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is like affecting the structure of everything else coming out of that. So like my report is only like 2 paragraphs instead of like 3 or more, like the prompt that can prompt
Yeah,
you to. And
that's definitely a possibility depending on what you're trying to research, right? Like not every website you're able to scrape directly, right? There's going to be some websites that are paywall blocked and require subscriptions and authentication and things like that. Um,
even though
so,
I use the same prompt, the same apocalypse prompt.
oh, if you use the same apocalypse prompt,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I will need to we'll need to look specifically at your agent. So I'll take a look after the this masterclass, and I'll take a look. If you wouldn't mind sharing in Slack, just tag me and add the debugger logs and your remix link, and I can take a look at it specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I wasn't able to answer it right away here. It sounds like it might just be something simple, but I'll double check and just make sure you have everything configured correctly.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Luis, along those lines, as far as scraping, if we use a proxy, is there a way for us to get the proxy into the workflow in MindStudio?
What do you mean by using a proxy?
Well, a proxy, when it kind of masks you when you get to the site, and it goes through, shows different IPs and things like that, so you don't get, snagged by Amazon or LinkedIn or some of these others. So I use Bright Data, and
Mm-hmm.
they integrate. Well, they've got an API or whatever, so that it'll all integrate. But yeah, that it uses a proxy, and then when I use Bright Data to scrape a site, it is able to do better than if I just send it by itself.
I see. Yeah, so if you wanted to, does Bright Data give you kind URL that you can use?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, it does. It's got a couple different options. I don't want to take up all the time with it because I'm not an expert either. But yeah, it just gives you some ways to get past, not necessarily firewalls. You can log in different things, but
Mhm.
all the little blocks that keep sites from being scraped. If you use a proxy, it kind of hides your IP and does some different things.
Yeah, so I'd say if you're able to get the same like a consistent URL from that service each time, you can run it as a URL in the scrape block. However, it sounds like you also have access to their API, so maybe you can instead of scraping a URL, run an API HTTP request directly through that service. And then also, the last thing I'll note is if this is a connection that you are interested in, make sure that you request the connection inside of. You can go into Workspace, integrations. Oh, actually, I believe I forgot where this form is. Sorry. There's going to be a form for adding connections
Okay.
if you want to request a new connection.
It's inside the block. There are two tabs when you add a new block, like view all
Okay.
blocks
Oh,
and
connectors. Yeah,
connectors.
here it is. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you, thank you. It's it's in this connectors section where you can request that connector specifically.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Luis.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, David, I see you have a question.
Hey, how you doing, Luis? I have kind of a similar question to the that you just asked before me. Uh, I put the post in relation to the issue with Agent 15. And I just re-tagged you a few minutes ago. I know you wouldn't have had time to have a look yet, but I suppose to ask is if you could just have a look where I'm going wrong. I think it's something to do with maybe how I'm writing the JSON. I don't think I can. I just
Sure.
keep getting the red
Yeah.
brackets.
I'll take a look after this call. Yeah. No
That'd be
problem.
brilliant.
Mm.
And I will probably be back with more issues. It seems to be getting the better of me every hurdle. But
No
I'll
problem.
keep
Yeah,
going.
this is why we're covering this in a build guide, in an additional tips and tricks guide, and 2 master classes. So
Yeah,
there's plenty of video
appreciate it.
content to review and double check your own builds. But yeah, happy to take a look.
Great.
Any
Thanks
other
very
qu
much.
No problem. Any other questions around just the output of this report here? Okay, so we're processing the report. And you can see that we have some reasoning, and then we have the full log that's saved to report.json. So let's go ahead and open up this full log and see what it generates. And what we're looking for is just to make sure that the structure is set and that the structure matches and is consistent. So we want to make sure we have that title and subtitle like we planned. We have this sections array of different objects. And we can see here that in this case, it looks like it generated, 6 different sections. And each section, if we scroll down, has an intro paragraph and it has an array of subsections, except for the very first one, which is the overview, right? Because we specifically said except for the overview in our prompt. So that's good. And in the second section, we have these specific subsections. Each item in the subsection contains a header and a few different paragraphs. So we can see here that we're getting this output, and if what we want to just look out for is that every time we run this, we are getting this exact same output with the exact same structure. The other thing is each source, you can see here we have, you know, well, it looks like 28 different sources that we brought in. All of those have a title and a URL associated with them. So this is all looking correct. So that's awesome. We can, once we verify this is all working, we can go ahead and let's go ahead and configure the mock data for this. And we know that we get this back. Let's go ahead and save our mock data, lock it in for our testing, and move on to the next step, which is going to be we want generating images for each individual section. So you can see here, we can use the generated JSON, run a sub workflow to generate an image for each section, each section. And we're going to use the content from the section to generate an image prompt and then generate an image. So this is pretty simple. We are all familiar with generating images, hopefully at this point. We're going to use a run workflow block because we know we want this as a sub process and we need to iterate through a list. And this is going to require a new workflow. So we're going to create a new workflow. We will rename it. We'll call this sub 3 gen image, just for our own organization here. And this workflow is going to, because it's a sub workflow, it's going to need some launch variables or a launch variable. In this case, we want to use information from a section. Use the content from the section to generate an image prompt. So we know that we're going to need the content from a section. So I'm just going to create a launch variable called section. And we'll map it a bit later. We'll actually get the value in a bit later. So now we can begin to generate our image prompt. Let's go ahead and add a generate text block. We'll rename this gen image prompt. And inside of the prompt here, we can include some tag called content. And let's make sure that we close those tags out. And the content that's going to be used as context is going to be the section. Okay. So we're passing through all of the content from that specific section. And then we want to have this generate an image prompt for us. So we're going to say, based on the content, generate a detailed AI prompt. Oops, I have a little typo here. Sorry about that. A detailed AI prompt that could be used, or maybe that could be sent to an AI image generation model. And we could say, make sure the content of the image is directly related to the subject, matter. Okay, and then we want to save this to a variable. We'll call this variable image prompt. There we go. And we don't need an output schema for this. This is fine if it's just a simple text output, because we're going to be using that text to actually generate our image here. So we're going to add another block. We will generate an image. And for our prompt, all we need to do, maybe the last thing that we need if we back up a step, is just the output. Just to remind it not to say, okay, here's an image prompt. We could say reply with the image prompt and nothing else. So only with the image prompt and nothing else. And then for the prompt here, we can use the variable image prompt that we saved in the previous step. And we will have an output of an image URL that we can use, and we'll call this image. I like to use IMG. You can use whatever you'd like. And we can determine the model that we'd like to use. So depending on what you'd like to use, go ahead and choose whatever model you'd like. I like to use Ideogram V2. And specifically, it gives us this aspect ratio. This is available in a lot of other models as well. I'm going to choose a landscape aspect ratio. So why don't we go ahead and choose maybe 16:10. And we'll leave everything else as is. We want it to have a little magic prompt. That's great. So we get this image back. And so we're going to need to pass that image back up to the parent workflow. And the way that we do that is simply by adding this JSON output, where we'll have image, and then the value of that is going to be the variable image. So we're just mapping this back to pass it back up. Any questions on generating the image? We'll get to mapping. How do we get the section in just a second? But any questions regarding how we generate the prompt, generate the image, set up the workflow for the run workflow block in the parent workflow? Yes, Alexander.
So one question I have is, if you set the prompt once, Luis, does it do a bulk, basically image generation for each section, or is this something that you have to iterate through?
It is something that we're going to iterate through. So you can see here, I set up a run workflow block, and we're going to go through each section, and we're going to pass through one section to create one image per section. Yeah, it's not going to generate like 6 images all at the same time. Okay, so we have this workflow all completed. Let's go ahead and in our run workflow block, we will select the gen image here. And for our launch variables, we can see, actually, let's run this multiple times. Our iterator, we want to use this JSON array input. And then for our input array, we want to pull a single section from in order to pass down, we want to grab the sections array so that we can pass down a single item from that sections array. So how do we do that? We can go into our debugger and look at our last run. And again, take a look at our log here. We know that this is saved to a variable that we called report JSON. And we know that we can use dot notation to get to this sections array. So in order to pass through only the sections array, we're going to use report JSON. And you can even see here, because we have this all set up, it actually appears here in this menu here, report JSON dot sections. Now what we can do is, we talked about this at the beginning, but sometimes when you're generating JSON and you want to more easily iterate through it, sometimes this happens where you'll get invalid JSON error. And one of the ways that we can try to avoid this is by changing this to a string value. Now, we mentioned kind of at the beginning of the call, there's this thing here in the documentation that turns it to a string value, kind of gets rid of all of the spaces and line breaks, and we're going to use that. And the way we use that is just by adding a little JSON all in lowercase in front of the variable name. So I'm just going to write that in. We're going to put JSON and then put a space, and then we're going to have this JSON dot sections here. For our output variable, we're gonna so what it's gonna do is gonna go for each section, generate an image per section, and then save all of those images into a single array. That's what this variable is going to represent, is the accumulated images in a single array. So we're gonna call this images. We're gonna save this array as images. And we can execute this in parallel. If it fails, no biggie. We can just ignore the failed run. We're not going to try and redo it. And then we have to pass through a single section from that array of sections. So if we look at this section array, a single item in this array is going to be each section. So each item from this sections array is one single section. So what that means is in our in the variable that we want to pass down as the section launch variable, we can simply include item, because our initial input is just that array of sections. And we know that one item is one section in this array. Is that making sense? Yeah? Okay, cool. That's why learning how to kind of navigate through this JSON is super important, because it makes it really easy. You don't have to go through the whole report.json in order to actually get a single section. You can just go and fetch the sections themselves. Okay, so now we are generating all of our images. Let's go ahead and we can test the step out. We're going to preview. We're going to run in the debugger. All of our mock data is locked in, so it should just go and start generating these images. There we go. You can see all of this is locked in. And now it's going through, generating each individual image, and we should, in the parent workflow, get an array of images. We can even click on an individual flow and see what section is being passed through. So we can make sure that the correct sections are being passed through, and you can see all of this content is being passed through correctly. We can also see what the output of the image prompt is, like what we're using for the image prompt itself. So this is our image prompt here, which is cool. And then we have our final image here that has been generated. So we can see here, in this case, we're doing desert survival. And look, this is like a super awesome image that we now have available for our report. And we actually, if we look up to the parent workflow, we now have this array of awesome images. So I like to just check, look, we saw the first image. Let's look at the last image. Looks like he found water in the desert. So that's awesome. Okay, so now we have this image array. We know that this part's working. Let's close out all these tabs. We know that the sub workflow is working. Now we can go ahead and lock this in. We can use the debugger, configure the mock data. We know that we got this on the last run. Let's lock it in and save it. So now we have all the mock data here. We can continue on to the next step. And the next step is we want to combine the images and the we basically have two lists here. We have this JSON report that is JSON, and we have this run workflow block that gives us a list of images. And we want to combine them into one so that we're able to use that final JSON inside of our HTML. So let's go ahead and do that. You can do this in a couple of different ways. One of the ways is by creating a custom function that does this. If you're interested in learning how, like, getting started, this is, JSON or JavaScript or Python. And if you're interested in learning some of this, we're going to be doing a special masterclass tomorrow where we are going to begin to learn about functions. The other thing to note is if you're not interested in code at all, you can do this with AI. It's just going to be a little, it's going to take a little longer to generate, and it's also going to be a little more cost intensive than doing it via a custom function. But it's totally doable via AI, and that's how we're going to do it here. so that we're not limited by code in any way. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to add a generate text block, and we're going to call this something like combine and format. I don't know. We can call it whatever we want. And inside of the prompt, we need to give it both of these variables. So we know we have our report JSON, report JSON, and we can see if we can find it here. There we go, report JSON. And we have our images. Here's our images variable. Now we can give it some instructions. We can say combine, and we want to reference these tags, combine this and this to create one single JSON object. You can say make sure to go in order as you iterate through sections and images. And then we can also have a cleanup step, just in case there's like anything that's like not formatted correctly. You can say additionally remove any markdown formatting. We can kind of give it some examples because we know that markdown formatting uses these like asterisks and it uses these hashtags and it uses, you know, other stuff. So I'm just going to write etc. And make sure everything is in plain text. And then we can give it our output and just say reply with the final JSON and nothing else. Okay, and we want to make sure that we save this to a variable. We can call this, you know, final JSON, whatever we want to call it. We want the output schema to be JSON. And why don't we go ahead and create the structure of this. And we don't need to rewrite this all, right? We already have the JSON. We just want to add an image to the sections. So we can actually go back and in this write report JSON, we have the JSON already. So I'm just going to select all of it, copy it. And then inside of this combine and format, if we open this up, I'm just going to paste it in. And all we want to do is add an image for each section. So right above the subsections, wherever you want to add it within the section object, I'm just going to go ahead and add image, or I'll put img. And then it's going to give us a URL, right? So I'm just going to put https://example.com. And that's our new JSON structure. That's what we're looking for here. So now that we know we have all of this set up, we can go ahead and test this step out. Let's just double check, make sure that image is in there. Awesome. Okay, we're gonna run this this workflow now. And this might take a second or two because it's kind of going through and generating that final JSON. I know we're over at time. I just want to do, so all this is being recorded, but I do want to finish the build today. So if you guys don't mind just staying on, you know, maybe 15, 20 minutes extra, we'll get through the last part of the build, which is actually generating the JSON. And then we will we'll celebrate. Any questions up to this point? The last step after this is just generating the asset. Once this finishes, and it might take a couple of minutes, we're going to just verify that it added the images correctly into our final JSON here. And then we will use some new features to actually generate that asset template for us, which will be nice. Should take just a second. While we wait, let's just look at some of the other images that it generated. Nice. We're reviewing a map. That's cool. What else? What else we got?
I can add some comment here a little if I
Sure.
may. When I was working on this, I actually skipped this step you're working on right now, this generating text node. I went straight to generate asset, and I was able to write a prompt there to generate HTML page which combined images and the topics and everything together without using this block.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, this is possible. So originally I had added this step because I thought it was easiest to iterate through using handlebars, using just a single variable. But yes, you're right. It's totally possible to do this with these two separate lists if you're able to prompt it correctly. So potentially we didn't need to do this step, and if you figure out a way to do it without it, more power to you. That's awesome. You're saving, you know, 20 cents well on this using this model 20 cents, right? With Gemini Pro. With Gemini Pro Flash, or excuse me, Gemini Flash will probably be cheaper than this. Okay, so let's go take a look and see if this generated the structure that we're looking for. All we want is to see an image URL in each section. So that's awesome. Yes, looks good. Image URL, perfect. Image URL, image URL, image URL, image URL. Great. This is all perfect. So now that we know that this is working, what can we do? We can lock it in using the configure mock data, and we now have our final JSON. So now we can go ahead and use the generate asset block to create our final JSON. And we talked about how this new feature launched that lets us essentially vibe code these screens. So we no longer need to use that generate asset helper. We can simply select the source type and make sure that we're using custom interface. Then we'll go ahead and configure the interface. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so that I can type. So the first thing when we're using this interface is we want to make sure we import our test data. And we can do that by clicking on import test data here. And we can see that we have our run here, only in this case, maybe it's not showing the final JSON here. Let's see if it actually brings it in. I think it's just a large variable, so we'll see if it brings it in here. So we'll click on import. And now we can see in our test data tab that all of that information should be there. So if I go in, actually, it looks like it wasn't able to bring in that test data. What we can do instead is for our test data, we will simply take the output of this, the full log, and we will copy, use this, if you hover over it, has like a nice little copy button. We'll click on that. And then inside of the generate asset block, instead of images, we will include it here in the final JSON. There we go. And then we can delete these other variables here. Perfect. Okay, so now we can begin to ask it to generate our report for us. So using final JSON, can you create an article page? I want to have images above each section and list out the sources at the bottom of the page. And now it will begin to craft our page here. We just need has everyone here like tried vibe coding before? Yes. Yeah. I think it's pretty fun. Like you get to just kind of tell an AI what you want and just it's almost like playing like a slot machine a little bit. And seeing what pops out of the little toy canister from the grocery store or something like that. But you can see here, this is pretty good. Generated. We can open this up in a tab and just kind of see a preview of it. Awesome. This looks perfect. Was able to, in just a couple minutes, make something that is totally passable. This sources thing looks a little weird, but totally fine. So once we're ready and we're feeling good about this asset here, we can go ahead and click on compile. And now we can, as it's compiling, we know that the output behavior of this is set display to user. The format is HTML, and we want to rehost the media. The other thing we want to do is just double check and make sure in the code. So one thing, don't be afraid of the code. You can just scroll down and look and make sure that we see our final JSON variable here. So here we go, final JSON. Okay, great. And it's using the title, subtitle, all that good stuff. You can kind of see each part of that JSON being rendered out somewhere in here. Yeah, Karen?
Sorry, Louis. How did you get to this? I see you got the chat code bit, but you're on the generate asset block, right? I
Yeah.
don't see that on my menu.
Yeah, so if you switch your source type to custom interface,
Got it. Thank you.
you'll-
That's the bit I missed.
yeah,
Thank you.
for sure.
Cool.
You'll get this kind of vibe codey interface here.
Cool. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, so now it's all locked in, and just like that, we have finished creating our agent. It's all compiled. So let's go ahead and publish this. 1 second. Let's go ahead and actually just test this out. We have all this stuff locked in. Let's run this in the debugger. Just make sure it's generating correctly. And we can look at this file. We can see it's all generated correctly. So now we can go ahead and publish it. Open up the agent, and in the published version, obviously all of the mock data from the blocks, none of that matters in the published version. That's only while you're testing and inside of your editor. If you want to keep all that stuff, you can keep it. If you want to clear the mock data, you can clear it. Now, this might take a little bit of time to run, and so I'm not going to run it on this call, but trust me when I say that that is the build. That's the whole thing, start to finish. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask. Otherwise, I'll be on the lookout in Slack for any questions as you're building. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you all so much, and please take advantage of this new vibe coding generate asset. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier. You won't have to deal with that generate asset helper like we did in the previous video. This is like a totally new feature, and it's way, way better. All right, everyone. Thanks so much, and we will see you on the interwebs. Who's coming to the technical masterclass tomorrow? Any hands?
What time is that, Luis?
It's going to be the same time. It's replacing Build Club. So
Okay.
instead of Build Club, it's going to be same time as all of our other, events.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Great. We'll see you there.
Luis.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.